Alright, students, welcome to the primary source walkthrough. This one is a little tough, and so it's a short primary source, but we're going to test a little bit slow to make sure that we get everything down. So what we have in front of us is we have the Act for the Abolition of Slavery in Pennsylvania, written around 1780. And this is a law that was written by Thomas Paine, the same Thomas Paine, T-Paine, sorry about that, who wrote Common Sense, which we have also discussed this week. So, if you're looking for page numbers, up here we have, if you've got the Siegel edition, you should be reading pages 237 to 245 to give yourself a little bit of background. But the basic background is this. The revolution is happening, so you can see 1780, we're well into the war at this point. The war is still going on, it's not over. It doesn't end until 1781, number one, and then the peace treaty isn't signed until 1783. So the war is still raging, though at this point the French have come in and things look a little bit better for the American patriots. So, let's go ahead and let me zoom out here a little bit. My dot camera is a little funky. There we go. So, I've kind of divided this into two, as you can see on the left. Up here we have the reasoning. Why are we doing this? So here Thomas Paine is going to explain to you why he thinks this law is necessary. And then down here, he's telling us this is the law. So this is the law that's going to go into effect. So let's take a look here. We'll zoom back in. And hopefully that corrects itself. There we go. And we'll see what this says. So he starts off and he says, "When we contemplate our abhorrence of that condition to which the arms and tyranny of Great Britain were exerted to reduce us, when we look back on the variety of dangers to which we have been exposed, and how miraculously our wants in many instances have been supplied, and our deliverance wrought, when even hope and human fortitude have become unequal to the conflict, we are unavoidably led to a serious and grateful sense of the manifold blessings which we have undeservedly received from the hands of that being from whom every good and perfect gift cometh." That's a mouthful. What he's saying is look, when we think about what Britain was doing to us, and we think about all of the good things that have happened to us since we declared our independence, and all of the blessings that God, being with a capital B, that means God, what God has given us, we start to think, well, man, we've got it pretty good. And then he continues, "Impressed with these ideas, we conceive that it is our duty, and we rejoice that it is in our power to extend a portion of that freedom to others." So, we're impressed by all the blessings that we've been given, and we're like, well, others deserve this too. And we think we should release from a state of thraldom, release from a state of slavery, because we were doomed to being slaves of the British. So now we think that maybe we need to free people who are our slaves. And he says, down here, he says essentially, looking around the world, we know God created the world, we know God created man, and who are we to wonder or question God's decision to make people of different colored complexions? And he loves them all equally, so why should we be any different? So, those are his reasons. The revolution has caused us to consider our fortune, and we think about what God would want for the people that he loves, and what should we do about it. Here's the law. We'll scroll up a little bit. So be it enacted, and it hereby enacted. So we're doing this. representatives of the free men of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in General Assembly met, and by the authority of the same, so this is the new government of Pennsylvania, that all persons, as well as Negroes, mulattoes, as others who shall be born within this state, from and after the passing of this act, shall not be deemed and considered as servants for life or slaves, and that servitude for life or slavery of children, in consequence of the slavery of their mothers, in the case of all children born within this state, from and after the passing of this act, as aforesaid, shall be, and hereby is, utterly taken away, extinguished, and forever abolished. Now, this sounds good on the surface, right? Slavery's over. At least that's what it sounds like. But let's dig in here. So, we're doing this. What are we doing? All persons, etc., from and after the passing of this act. What does that leave out? It leaves out before. Okay, so once this act goes into law, people will not be slaves, and if you were born to a slave mother, you won't be slave. But again, this is leaving out people who were born and who are slaves before the passing of this act. It says nothing about them. The people who were slaves before this law was passed in Pennsylvania remain slaves. They are not given their freedom. Because again, from and after the passing of this act. So those who are slaves remain slaves. The same thing about this law. Provided always, and be it further enacted by the authority aforesaid, that every Negro and mulatto child born within this state after the passing of this act, as aforesaid. So if a black person or a person of mixed race is born here in Pennsylvania after the passing of this act, and who in this case, this act had not been made, would have been born a slave for years or life or a slave, shall be deemed to be, and shall be by virtue of this act, the person of such, the servant of such person, of the, by virtue of this act, the servant of such person, or his or her assigns, who would, in such case, have been entitled to the service of such child until the child shall attain unto the age of 28 years. So if you are born after this act, and you would have been a slave, you would still be a slave until you were 28. Okay, so what do we do with this? So we see that Thomas Paine talking really awesomely about freedom and God and how he's looking out into the world, and Pennsylvania has looked out into the world and decided, slavery is not great. God wouldn't want this for anybody. But then we come down here to the law itself, and he's saying, okay, we're not freeing anyone who is currently a slave, and also anyone who is born and would be free under this law, they have to be a slave until 28 years old. So this is not, by any means, a complete abolition of slavery in Pennsylvania. It's incomplete. You might even wonder, is this actually abolition at all? Or does it just sound like abolition? Does it just feel like abolition? And I think you might be right to think that way. So one of the things that you might consider with this primary source is, why would they do this? Why is this the case? Why would Pennsylvania decide to say, we really want to get rid of slavery, but we're not going to do it yet? Or at least, we're going to do it in a way that allows some time to go by before slavery is completely gone. That's something you have to think about. And I think you read the textbook and you read a little bit more about evolution, you might be able to come up with an answer to that question. But how you answer that question, what the answer to that question is up to you. And it's a matter of interpretation. So I'm not going to give you any notes on that. I certainly have an opinion, but I want you to think that through. Why take this quarter measure? It's not even a half measure, it's like a quarter measure. That's something that you need to think about. So that's a lot of thinking to do about just 3 paragraphs worth of stuff. This is why primary source analysis can be so much fun. All right, y'all, we're going to go on to the next primary source, or I'm going to go on to the next primary source, so I will see you for the next one. Thanks for tuning in.